We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Valtin. Welcome back, everyone, to the BraveCo podcast. This week, we have the highly anticipated, the highly acclaimed,
the
highly talented Kolzek, everyone.
And the highly deceiving Jason Valtin giving an false flattery and an inaccurate intro.
Yeah, right, dude. You're the man. They all know you're the man, Cole.
I miss you, Jay.
Yeah, I miss you too.
We haven't hung out enough lately.
I know. It's just the way it goes.
I know it. It's too busy. We made too many kids between the two of us.
Oof.
I think the last time I saw you was at Caleb's football game.
Oh, yeah, a while ago, huh?
It's like a month ago.
Dude, I killed a moose in between then and now.
I did see the picture of the moose.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
I've talked about it on this podcast enough. People are like, stop talking about the moose, dude.
I've killed nothing between then and now.
Yeah. Well, today I've been having on my heart for a long time. I wanna like give guys just something they can grab onto for their sons. And so, man, you're such a good dad, Cole. You're one of the best dads I know. And
it's because I have you in my phone and I call you whenever I don't know what I'm doing.
So
there's truth to that, and you know it.
We're gonna talk a little bit about how to turn a young boy into a man. Just some aspects of that. And because you're right in the thick of it. Dude.
Yeah.
You've got like 92 young boys and
93 actually.
You've got these 3 young boys that are awesome. I can't remember the ages of them because they change every year.
They change every year. It's how it works, but 14, 12, and 10. And then I have, obviously we have Chloe that's 8, the baby girl.
And it's like the role of a father, one of the major roles of the father is to help train a son, right? And to help a family. But when we're talking about boys, we're talking about my role as a dad is to develop, discover, deploy. I'm thinking through, how do I give my son intentional training to get him prepared for the life that he was designed and built for?
Yeah.
That's a big job.
It's huge. And you never have a break. There's not like a lunch break.
No, you don't get a day off on it.
There's no vacation from it.
It's real. And what we don't have right now, that we are going to have, is an actual path for fathers and sons to go down a weekly journey to take your son through. We don't have that right this second. And we will. Mark my words, man. It's coming.
It's marked.
Tomorrow. No.
Tomorrow.
It's coming. But it is that being said, there comes a point where you start to realize, okay, my boys are transitioning into men.
Yep.
And I have to begin to do these things in their life to help them transition well. Things like mow the lawn and, all those things there. But then you start thinking through like how to date a woman, how to handle conflict, how to own their life, right? They're starting to run their life. And so it was fun when we were talking earlier. I was like, Cole, where are you in the middle of right now? He's like, I'm in the middle of teaching my young men how to take ownership of their life, how to clean up messes. And so, man, I just love to talk through that some with you and to give fathers some tips, because if we don't intentionally do this with our young men, then one of two things happen. They grow up being like their mom. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
I'm kidding.
Only kinda.
Yeah. They just grow up feeling so unprepared.
Yeah.
For the challenges that they have. So they either don't do them, they don't do the conflict, they don't date a woman, but they don't have the confidence to do it, or they try to do it without any guidance.
Yeah.
And it just becomes these big pain points in their life.
Absolutely.
And so, I think being intentional as a father and setting our kids up for success is key.
Yep.
What have you done so far, Cole? Like, what did you do to prepare your sons that they were coming into manhood? Was that a conversation that you started having with him?
I think I don't know that there was a moment. I would say that the general natural approach I have with the boys is prepping for who you're going to be.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think that's part of it. Like, that's a pretty common thought leadership wise. The people will tell you, hey, dress for who you're going to be. You know, that's a superficial way of looking at it. But I'm always preparing for who I'm going to be or what I believe my calling is in the future. And so I try to keep my boys in that too. Like, I'll tell them regularly, like, you're going to be the spiritual leader of your home one day. This is why you step up in this moment, because of what's coming, because of who you are, because of who you're going to be. You know, the boys will get mad because they're like, why are you different with Chloe than you are with us? Well, because you're never going to be this, you're never going to carry the spiritual mandate. She's never going to carry the spiritual mandate in a home the way you are.
Yeah.
You're going to be the one that has to carry weight in a unique way. And so I have to prepare you for that, you know? And so, you know, I would say, you know, with all three of the boys, it's not like a moment. I would say the idea of becoming a man, that language is probably laced through most things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
An example, I coach a ton of the kids' sports. I didn't play sports in high school. I wrestled. I didn't do anything else. It's horrible at basketball. Horrible.
You're not even coordinated.
Barely. Right. And
you're just basically living vicariously through all these boys.
Yeah, exactly. I'm living out the childhood dreams I could never do. But I've ended up coaching because that's what my kids are interested in, right? And I do think sports are a really great way to teach.
Yeah.
This is probably an extreme statement, but maybe in some ways even more so than school, they teach about real life, right? Like you're on a team, self-sacrifice, right? Like there's lots of things.
Yeah.
So last week, we had a game this week. I'm coaching my 7th graders flag football team. At halftime, I had discovered, right before we went into half, they had been all doing something. Halftime's about to end. We're out on the field. We're about to start. No, they're literally setting the ball. And somebody tells me the boys had stuffed stuff up in their flag to make the flag harder to pull. Right? So
they're cheating. Essentially, they're cheating.
So I call timeout, and the clock hasn't even started yet. I pull all the boys off the field. Of course, the ringleader of it is Connor, my son.
Your son.
And one of the coaches just goes, did we just waste a timeout? I go, yes, we did. They come off. I go, fellas, if you put something in your flags to make it harder to pull it out right now. And I just addressed it quick. We went into the game. And then we got to the end of the game, and I looked at the team, and I go, guys, and it was an older kid that had given him this idea. I said, you are your entire life going to have older people, different people try to give you ideas that will compromise your character. You have to be stronger than the idea.
Yeah.
Right. And you just use that moment to teach. And then I have a private conversation with Connor about it. But I would say everything I do right now feels like it's threaded with who they are and who they're becoming and who they're going to be.
I love it.
And I think we started it early.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love it because if you don't start early, then man, there's so many really challenging days ahead for our kids that they have to know how to navigate and prepare for. For me,
because you've already made a couple men.
Yeah, I have. I've made a couple men. It's challenging because some young men are ready for it. They're like, my son Elijah is like, man, put me on my own. I'm ready to go. Put me in the game, coach.
He would have moved out at 12 if you'd have let him.
Yeah. And Evan, although Evan moved out earlier than all the other kids, his personality is a little bit different. And
Evan moved out because there were little ones in the house by the time he graduated. He's like,
I'm going to tell a story about why Evan moved out here in a minute. But yeah, being able to have in mind. So for me, growing up, one of the things I remember my dad doing a lot was, my dad actually sat me down and he had this conversation with me. He said, hey, we're at the point where it's more my job to coach you than it is to solve these things for you. And that was really helpful for me.
Yeah.
It was like, my freshman year of high school.
Yep.
And he said, so, I'm still here for you. And there will be times when I tell you what to do, but I want you to learn how to think. I want you to
Great,
start
Jay.
learning and thinking about how to think.
Yeah.
And how to solve problems. And I remember that year I had a teacher who she really just didn't like me. And there's probably really good reasons, but
yeah,
I don't know. So
I relate to her.
Yeah. My sophomore year, this happened. I had copied my girlfriend's paper, and who turned out to be my wife later on. I copied her paper word for word.
Yeah.
And in that same class,
word for word, you didn't
much.
think like change it up?
I didn't even need to. It was a year. My girlfriend was a year ahead of me.
Yeah.
So she had an old paper. I had copied it word for word and turned it in. Well, my girlfriend got a B on it and I got a D on it. Honest to God.
Wow.
My English teacher. Yeah. She just did not like me. And,
that's actually amazing.
I know. I know. You know, what's so funny is I felt really free to like cheat in high school.
Yeah.
Although I didn't cheat in any other area of my life.
Isn't that funny how that works?
I felt like it was so unfair. So, which doesn't justify it, but that's how I felt about school. Like,
yeah.
So anyways, I did that. And I remember coming home and telling my dad, like, this teacher just hates me. She doesn't like me. She's giving me bad grades on purpose, blah, blah, blah. And I remember him talking to my mom. He told me this later. Like he had talked to my mom and been like, I should probably go in and have a conversation with her. And then he came back to me and said, son, these are the battles that you have to fight. That you have to learn how to fight. You might have to learn how to win favor with her.
Yeah.
I remember thinking through like, well, how could I win favor with this woman? And so I started going to her class at study hall.
Oh.
Right. I started to use her class as one at study hall.
Yeah.
And I built a relationship with her. What I found out later was that she was going through cancer and she was just really having a very hard year.
Yeah.
And I found that out because I built a relationship with her. I started to go like, hey, how are you? And I had her help me on, my work and papers. And it was one of those areas of my life where my dad actually took a season of time and said, you're going to have to start working out some things.
I can't get you out of this. You got to get yourself out.
You got to get yourself out of this. And I want you to start. It was in that same season that my dad came to me, which I think this is a really good conversation for all men to have with their sons around, the 14, 15, 16-year-old, is my dad actually said to me, I want you to make all of your mistakes at home because you have me. What he was telling me is invite me into the mistakes that you're making so that we can work through and problem solve them together. It was so incredibly helpful because the theme in our home was you're becoming a man and I'm here to coach you.
Yep.
You're not going to get it all perfect, but together we're going to prepare you for what's coming.
It's great.
Yeah, it was really incredibly helpful for me.
Yep.
And so I think for some dads out there to start thinking through, like if your son's in that 13 to, 15-year-old range, you got to be having this conversation with him.
Yeah.
Where you're setting him up for success, because here's also what happens here's the conversation that pivots off this is I had a dad call me probably 6 months ago. And he said, man, I'm just having the hardest time getting my son to contribute around the house, which, dude, I friggin' understand that.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
You're like, oh, really? That was a piece of cake for me.
Yeah. And, so I said, well, it's a time in your son's life where you sit him down and you actually explain to him, you're becoming a man.
Yeah.
And so you're going to take on more responsibility than what I've asked of you before. And I'm not expecting that you'll like it. I'm not expecting that it'll be the funnest thing you do, but it'll be one of the most important things. Give him value, right? Create the value.
Yeah.
For hard work. And I remember my dad starting to sow that into me. And I think the thing that my dad did wrong in that area is my dad would tell me how hard he worked compared to how hard I was working. And what he was trying to do was to motivate me in the sense of like, make me feel thankful that I didn't have to work as hard as him.
Yeah.
Mostly what I felt was shame.
Yeah.
The great thing that my dad did for me was he pulled me in to be a part of the team. And, so we worked a lot of weekends and holidays. We were all constantly working on the auto parts stores and the businesses that he had, painting them, stocking the shelves, doing all that.
And then the family business became ministry, and here you are still.
Yeah, I'm still doing it. God dang, man, I can't get out of business.
I love it.
But my dad was able to have conversations with me that created the correct expectation. And he painted vision around why I was doing the things that I was doing. And I think sometimes as dads, we ask our boys to do stuff that we don't give them vision for. It just feels like a pain.
Yep.
It just feels like, bah. So I really think part of the success in turning a boy into a man is doing a great job giving him vision for that.
That's so good.
And when we look at, 1,000 years ago, when a boy, or 100 years ago, 500 years ago, these different places, when a boy would transition into manhood, there was often a known rite of passage that they were about to step into.
Yeah.
So their whole life, 8 to 12 years old, when they're starting to be conscious of, they're starting to look at what these other young men are getting that they don't have.
Yep.
Their friend that's 13 is now being called a man and they're not.
Yeah, totally.
He's now able to hunt with the grown men. They're not.
Yeah.
He's looking for a wife. They're not. And they're starting to go like, I want that type of respect at 12. So they're looking at, he's doing harder work, but he's a man.
Yep. He's got freedom and all that stuff.
Responsibility,
that goes with it.
All that. We don't have that picture. So I think for us as fathers to starting to think through, okay, turning a boy into a man is that the conversation, I think, is really critical.
Yep.
It's as critical as the tasks.
It's great.
That I'm doing.
Yeah. The dialogue, the explanation, all of that.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, to me, one of the things that I think is critical with it too is one of the things I think that I found with my boys that helps them respond to that is maybe, I think it's a part of that vision and that explanation is how I want them to know every day, I believe fully in you.
Yeah, that's great.
Right? Like even on moments that I'm frustrated and I'm angry and I'm just ticked off that they're making the decision that they're making. One of the things I've tried to do really clearly with the boys is you can actually, whatever you decide you want to do or that God's called you to do when you're older, you're going to be able to do that if you decide to give yourself to it.
Yeah.
Like you're gifted enough, you're qualified enough, you're intelligent enough, you're skilled enough. The question now becomes, are you willing to work to get that? But without a doubt, you're capable.
Yeah.
And helping them realize, like one of the things that we try not to, like one of the things that we've never done in our house is, oh, you wouldn't understand. That's a statement we never make with our kids because I actually don't want to deposit that type of thought process in my kid.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't want them growing up thinking I wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
I've actually had moments with the boys, even at 10, I think Connor was 10 and Caleb was 12. And I said, they asked a question. I go, actually, you would understand that because of how smart you are. I'm not sure I want you to know that yet though.
Right.
Actually, because you would understand it, I think I'd like to wait. Can we wait to answer that question? Right? I
don't want to awaken something in you you're not ready for.
Exactly. So I'm creating a parameter, but I'm also instantly saying, hey, but you're so brilliant that your brilliance would actually be the problem here.
Yeah, it's great.
Right. And so let's wait on that and making sure they know, the boys, Caleb wants to play baseball in college. There's not a week that goes by that I don't tell him you can do this if you want to.
Yeah.
Like you can, absolutely. I believe in it as much as he does for him. Right. And I think that's a big part of this. And I think that actually helps give the why to even parenting into the vision. When I look at how gifted my kids are and how called they are and how anointed they are, it helps frame why to teach. It helps frame why to disciple.
Yeah.
It helps frame, hey, there's a calling on your life that has to be realized. And it's all of these little moments that help you become the man that's going to be required to accomplish that.
Yeah, it's great.
And keeping that in front of them.
So part of the discover, develop, deploy piece of a man's job is to help your sons and daughters and your family really suss out, like, what am I good at? What is, what's the thing that burns in me, right? And then to pour fuel and fire on that. My dad did that when he told me about David's Mighty Men, and then he found out that I have a real passion to turn these broken men into these mighty men. Then he started to say, like, hey, when you go to youth group, you need to find people who are broken, who are lost, who are hurting, and help them.
Yep.
And he called that out in me, like, you're really good at helping people. He actually helped me believe that I could do that.
Yeah.
That was massive for me. And then the other piece that my dad did that was really great in helping develop me into a grown man, is he told me secrets. My dad told me all that. I knew stuff that no one else knew that I knew. I have always, my whole entire life, I've known stuff about leadership, about the church, about what's going on in the church. I would be in the car and my dad would have someone in the front seat. And I can remember this guy's talking about his, how his marriage isn't doing good and his wife, is about to leave him. And I remember my dad just looking back at me and saying, hey, this stays right here. No problem. And my dad because my dad trusted me with that stuff.
Yeah.
He would tell me that kind of stuff all the time, right? He would be like, man, here's the leadership thing that we're working through at church. Here's the thing and I'm sure there's lots of things I didn't know.
Yeah.
But my dad started letting me in on these leadership decisions at 13, 14, 15, 16. I'd go to church and I'd see that guy and I'd be like, I know that guy's crazy. Or like, I really respect that guy.
Yeah, sure.
My dad told me about how this thing happened and he stood up. And so I really do. I feel like when your young men believe that you trust them, and you're giving them trustworthy things, you now have a reason to step up and to be trustworthy.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like a leader. And I started to think through, that's actually where I started to learn problem solving.
Yeah.
Is my dad would bring me into these problems that they were having. And he was talking through it with me. And he would tell me the decisions that he was making. And never about my mom and his marriage in a negative way or something like that.
Yeah.
But all these leadership decisions it was like, that's actually one of the things when I look back that marked me the most.
Well, and I think that's pretty there with all of us, right? Like, I remember my dad was a contractor, and getting to go to work with him.
Yeah.
I mean, you just couldn't wait. And I mean, it's not like there's anything to do.
Right.
Right. Like, he's drywalling this house.
Yeah.
I'm running around in the woods, helping a little bit, not really probably helping him at all, but he's making me feel like I'm helping him.
Yep.
And that feeling of, oh, my dad's including me in what he does.
Yep.
That is probably, I would say that's one of the larger identity givers in a young man's childhood.
100%.
Is when their dad starts pulling them into what they do and how they do it and what they get to be a part of.
Well, if you look back, when we changed from the agricultural age to the industrial age, in the agricultural age, kids were needed.
Yeah.
They weren't just wanted. But you had lots of kids, right? You had 5, 10, 7, 8,
and they
9
built
kids.
your house for you.
Well, they maintained everything.
Yeah.
So those kids were, collecting the chickens, pulling weeds, tending the garden, raising pigs, milking the cows, making butter, making bread. And so a young child saw themselves as valuable, as a part of the team.
Yeah.
The bread that you're eating on the table, somebody went and collected the grain. The butter that you're eating, another child made it. The milk that you're drinking, this child milked it. And you learn that the value of being a part of a community. When we transitioned into the industrial age, right, all of a sudden kids became a burden because mom and dad,
right.
What happened at first is men went to war. So you have mom at home who has to go to work and has kids. Now the kids are a burden. So instead of having
because there isn't
5, 6, 7 kids, you're going to have 1, maybe 2 kids. I think 1.4 children is like the average in the United States now, something like that. It's way less, where if you go back 100 years ago, it was way more.
Yeah.
Okay. So we transitioned, and then now we're in the information age, right? And kids are no longer a benefit in the sense of, sorry, I should say it like this. They're not a necessity for survival in our everyday life.
Yep.
So it's actually easier for a couple to not have kids.
Right.
because I have to find somebody to watch my kids. There's no garden to garden.
Mm-hmm.
There's no milk, no cows to milk. There's no chickens to collect eggs from. There's no place to contribute. So if you really think about it psychologically, our kids are growing up in the world where they're not needed.
Yeah.
The original design was that kids would grow up in a world where they're needed.
That's really good, Jay.
I don't just love you, I need you.
Yeah.
If you don't show up, that's why we don't have milk tonight. Could you imagine in a home back then, that's what the dads were doing.
Yeah.
They, at some point it was, I'm not covering you. You're going to have to sit in front of the family and they're all going to know that the milk's not here because you didn't milk the cow today.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting that you say that. So I just got back, I work part-time for the airline, SkyWest. I just had 8 days of training because we just got Alaska to Reading a couple years ago. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. So I had 8 days of training up in Seattle. What you do is you basically train all day with a class of 25, and then in the evenings, we all kind of hang out, right? And there's this girl that is so unique. Her name's Mary that I met. She lives in Sitka, Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Was raised Amish and is telling us stories. She's no longer Amish, but telling us stories of her childhood.
At 14 years old, Amish are no longer in school.
She at 7 was roofing her house. And what's so intriguing is this girl in Sitka owns 2 businesses that she's started. She's mid-20s. Not married yet.
Yeah.
She owns 2 businesses that are super successful. She is the primary importer of produce for the town of Sitka.
Wow.
She services over 300 homes every Friday that she gets their produce to them, and she's the primary one that filters it into the city. She's got contracts with Oregon and these different things, and she gets it on Thursdays, and she's telling me her whole process. And I'm just sitting there looking at this girl like, who are you? And then we get to know her, where she's like, oh yeah, growing up is like, we built our house. I go, what do you mean, like built your house? She goes, we built our house.
Yeah.
Like, who's we?
Do?
Me. Like, how old were you the first time you were on a roof? And she's like, probably 4 or 5. I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm on a roof. She's on a roof as early as
you're wherever the family is, because that's what the family's doing.
And now she's an adult and she's solving problems in her community because solving problems became an innate part of her childhood.
Yeah.
And the way she was raised.
I mean, if you think about it, it's one of the best predictors of success in children is children who do chores with their family. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Children who participate with their family.
And they've actually proven that. Now there's studies that show that.
100%.
Yeah.
So, as a father, right, when we're raising our kids, we have to remember that creating necessity, creating a spot where your kids are needed is really important for their development and for the growth and for their buy-in to the family. And I think also one area that gets overlooked is, I don't know how my dad figured this stuff out, but he just naturally did it really good. He taught me what it meant to be a Valtin.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell me these stories about his grandfather and his grandfather, because his dad had died when he was 3. So his grandfather raised him.
Okay.
And his grandfather wasn't a Christian.
Yeah, I knew that.
But his grandfather would say, he had this phrase, he'd say, a man is only worth what he can work. That was my grandfather.
Wow.
Now, my dad would tell me that, but he would say, that's not the full piece, right? The full piece is obviously we're created in God's image. But he would tell me, our grandfather gave us a work ethic, a good work ethic. I remember being probably 11 years old, maybe 10, being in Burger King. And we had driven to Reading. We were in Burger King. And
went to the big city from Weaverville.
And there was this kid, he's probably like 16, and he was working, and he was like holding his broom, and he was sitting there and he's looking around, and my dad said, hey, do you see that guy? I said, yeah. He said, don't ever do that when you're working. I'm like, do what? He said, don't ever stop. Don't ever sit on your broom and look around while everyone else is working. I'm like 11 years old, and my dad's teaching me these values, right? These values. So he would tell me, like, that's not what we do.
Yep. I love it.
What I think is really important is to create an ethos.
Yeah.
Because as a man, if you have an ethos, it's your vision statement, it's your mission statement, it's your virtues and your values packaged together.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it means to be Jason Valtin.
Yeah.
This is what you can count on. This is how I'm going to show up.
Yep.
This is what you can expect of me. This is the mission I'm on. This is what we're accomplishing. It's that kind of identity that we're imparting to our sons.
Yeah.
It's not just, I'm teaching you how to be a man so that you can be successful. I'm teaching you how to be a Valtin man.
Yep.
And this
So
is
good.
part of what we've been given in this life. This is how Valtins show up. You give them identity as a Valtin, and now all of a sudden it's a game changer. My daughter, she's 4 years old, and we've started teaching her about what it means to be a Valtin.
Yeah.
And she'll randomly say, Valtins share. That's what we do.
I love it.
Because she'll see another kid who's not sharing. And of course, guys, there's like 95,000 times where she doesn't share.
Yeah.
But we're starting to build.
She's seeing and finding that identity.
We're starting to build into her at 4 years old.
Absolutely.
What a Valtin does. And I hear my wife say this, Edie, Valtins are kind. Valtins are. So when Edie's, you know,
that's so
when
good.
Edie's acting up, she's like, babe, you know, you want to try that again? Valtins are kind. And she's not shaming her with it or beating her over it.
But it is a really big source of identity. I see it. And the nice part is as you establish that culture, it filters to the other kids. So we had you'll get a kick out of this. Same football game I referenced. Connor's my 12-year-old, 7th grade, the boys, they're great athletes, right? Makes this unbelievable play, almost the full length of the field. Goes out of bounds. He's a wide receiver. And then he does some motion. And I'm coaching. So I instantly pull him, right? I swap him out for another wide receiver and I go, bud, we don't taunt.
Yeah.
Ever. Do your best, but don't taunt. So it wasn't a big moment. I kept him out for a few plays. He goes, all right, Dad, sorry. I'm sorry. I just got carried away. So I put him back in after a couple plays.
He's how old?
He's 12. But we get in the car and we're talking about it. And Cade, the 10-year-old, he brings it up. And he's like, Connor, what were you thinking? You know Dad's your coach. He goes, as soon as I saw you do this, I was like, oh, you're dumb, man. You're coming out of the game. And which is just so, we're creating this culture. And then, of course, the conversation comes and Connor again goes, yeah, Dad, why is it such a big deal?
Yeah.
And I said, well, because, kiddo, we do our best, but we don't taunt. We don't make other people feel bad about what we just did good. Right. And we say, oh, everybody does it. It's, and then we're sitting there and we're dialoguing about it. I'm unpacking the why.
Yep.
And I'll unpack the why as many times as he needs me to. And then every time he contradicts who we are, he has to sit.
Yeah, it's true.
Right.
It's amazing. It really is. You only get that if you have created a standard.
Yep.
And if you're instilling vision into your young men. It's a challenging thing. It really is.
Well, and you have to pay the price to do it. I would say probably one of the big things I think we have to remember is you're probably going to pay a personal price to disciple well.
A ton.
It's going to take longer.
Yeah.
Conversations don't go quick.
Yeah.
You have to lose something to teach oftentimes.
Yes.
If I want to teach my son how to do something I'm working on, I'm going to go
slow,
twice as long.
Yeah.
Right. Another example that's why I love sports so much. We had a moment in a game, there's probably a minute left in the half. Connor's arguing with the ref. Pull him. The moment I pull him, the very next play, his position gives up a touchdown.
Oh, that's amazing.
The person that I put in for him.
Yeah.
And he stands next to me. And I wasn't angry. I didn't yell. I just looked at him. I go, you realize that touchdown is because I had to pull you out.
Yep. That's on you.
He goes, I know. I go, that's the price that we have to pay when you argue with the ref. Please don't do it again.
Yep. Man, one of the mistakes I made with my young boys growing up is I was more invested in them winning than they were. In the sense that they would do something at home, like not clean their room.
Yep.
And I would take them to the game when I should have left them at home.
Yeah.
And went, hey, we can go as soon as your room's clean.
Yep.
It's those types of things that in those areas that I started to realize, like, I wanted them to win more than, I was enjoying this more than they
100%.
were. And not teaching them that valuable lesson.
I'll never forget the first time I made Connor miss a practice because he didn't do something he was supposed to do at home. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You can't make me miss practice. It's my team. I go, it was really clear. You've had 2 days to do it.
Yeah. I didn't make you miss practice. You did.
Yeah. I didn't do this. You did this to you.
Yeah. It's real. That pain as dads, we have to be willing to walk through.
You do. And that's a sports really superficial version. And there's a applicable sacrifice in probably 3 or 4 other, 5 other, 6 other real areas where, oh man, in order to discipline him right now, I only have a 2-hour break. I'm going to use my 2-hour break to discipline if I have to.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have to be willing to sacrifice to train men, because it's going to come at a sacrifice to them, but it's also, I'm going to have to sacrifice in order to do it. And I think a lot of times I see parents trying to appease, or they're fighting for peace so much that they don't take the time to disciple.
Yeah.
And that's where we go wrong as a culture, when we're not, just accept, I have a hard decade ahead of me.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like, honestly, it sounds daunting, but once I wrap my head around that, it actually becomes freeing.
Yeah.
I have a decade commitment while they're in my home to disciple as good as I possibly can. And that means that, you know what? I'll have peace 10 years from now.
It's true. Well, and you're ultimately raising up your kids in a way that they're going to be successful. So one of my boys, he had turned 17, and I'd been having a really hard time getting him to contribute around the house. There's lots of reasons for that. The kids going back and forth was really hard, establishing a routine.
Yeah.
And so one day I was asking him, hey, can you go out and mow the lawn and weed whack? And he had told me like, hey, can I do it tomorrow? I got this thing. And I was like, yes, but you have to do it perfect tomorrow, without me asking. Otherwise it's just do it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So of course the next day comes. I'm like, hey, you said you're going to mow the lawn, Oh yeah. No, I'm going to do that right now. So he mows the lawn, and I go out there, and it's not actually mowed very well. There's pieces that are missing. And so I confront him on it. Hey, lawn's not mowed right, bud.
Yeah.
I expect you to mow the lawn well when you mow it. And I'm not like being crazy. I'm not like being irrational.
Absolutely.
So then he mows the lawn. He's like, okay, I'm going to go play. I'm like, hey, actually you didn't weed whack. Like every time we mow, we weed whack. It's just, it'd be like you get a haircut and they don't do the trim around. Like,
right.
If you pay for a haircut, you expect them to trim around the ears too.
That's right.
So he gets out there and he's frustrated, and he weed whacks it and comes back, and I look at it and it's not great. So I decide like, this isn't working. So I call him back in, and I just tell him like, hey dude, I love you so much. You know that, right? Yeah. He's frustrated. Yeah. Okay. I'm feeling really frustrated.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about me. I feel really frustrated. Because not only was this not done, wasn't done right.
Yep.
But what's actually making me feel frustrated is that you're frustrated at me
for you not doing it right.
Come
on, bro.
That's what's actually frustrating for me. And he was like, I know and I just at that point, I just said, hey, there's only one person in this home that can do the lawn however he wants.
And that's me.
There's only one person in this home that if I don't want to mow the lawn, I don't, because the thing is, here's the thing is, if you don't do your responsibilities as a man, I actually feel irresponsible.
Yeah.
As a dad.
It's great.
I feel like I'm not doing you a service. If I just let you mow however you want to mow, or not mow at all, like, how is that helping you?
Yep.
And then it's not helping me.
Yeah, man.
And so the problem that we have, is you don't want me to tell you what to do. This is actually the conversation I had. You don't want me to tell you what to do. And I get that. I don't want anybody telling me what to do either.
Yep.
You're 17 years old. But it doesn't get done if I don't tell you.
Yeah.
And I pay for everything here, which is not shame on you. It's a blessing for me to do that. But what it literally means is that you're not contributing.
Correct.
This is the place in which you contribute here. So how do I feel good as a father? Not requiring you to contribute, not requiring you to do it correctly, but then when I do, you're frustrated and angry at me.
Yeah, it's good, Jay.
It's just not working.
Yep.
So I told him, I actually don't want to keep getting put in the spot where you're angry at me. You're 17.
Yeah.
If you don't want to mow the lawn and weed whack, like if you're not happy to do that in exchange for free food and free rent, like I think you should find another place. Like I think that you should, he's in his senior year of high school.
Yep.
I said, I love you. Like I'm not angry at you. I actually think if you don't want me telling you what to do and you don't want the input and you're not going to do it on your own and you're not going to do it correctly, you should figure that out.
Yep.
He comes out of his room an hour later, right?
Is this Elijah or
I can't tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you after.
Okay.
He's like 5 weeks from graduating high school.
I already know who it is.
He comes out and he says, I'm going to move out. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, that's great. And he said, Dad, it's not because I'm mad. Because honestly, I'm not moving out to like get back at you or because I don't want to do that. I actually feel like I'm at a place where I need these challenges. I need to like feel what it's like to be on my own. And I'm going to move in with my cousin. And I was like, dude, give me a hug. He gave me a hug and I was loving on him. Well, 3 hours go by. I forget. I totally forget. But I'm genuinely happy. I'm like, problem solved. His cousin comes over and he walks in and Lauren's there.
Yep.
And his cousin says, or Lauren says, hey, what are you doing here, Isaac? And he goes, oh, I'm here to help him pack. And she goes, what do you mean you're going to help him pack? And Isaac goes, well, he's moving in with me. And Lauren's like, wait, what? And I was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, babe. She was like, no, he is not. Listen, Isaac looks at his cousin, looks at my son and goes, wait, you didn't tell your mom that you're moving out? Bro, you have to tell your mom.
Oh my gosh.
So Lauren kind of freaked out and she called my dad and was like, hey, this is what happened. And what do you think? And my dad was like, nah, I think he should probably move out. He's not moving out because he's angry. He's moving out because he wants more of a challenge. So here's what happens. This is so awesome. He moves out of the house and within like a month, he's blown through any savings that he had.
Yeah.
He had all these ways he was going to like rent a house. He was going to like rent a house and then like sublease. You know how like kids have all these ideas of how they're going to make loads of money. They're going to drop ship stuff. He had the toughest year, but because I never shamed him, because I believed in him, because I didn't kick him out.
Yeah.
Every time he'd come back and go, hey, I'm not doing good financially. Like we actually had to, at that time, he didn't know how to look through his bank statements. And so we realized like, oh shoot, man, come back. We'll teach you how to we'll teach you how to budget. Lauren and I gave him $500, and to like, he didn't have any money left. Let's go through, teach you how to shop for groceries. See, the first like 3 weeks, he had made 50 pounds of spaghetti. That's all he knew how to make. And that's what he ate for the first 3 weeks.
So much easier than mowing the lawn.
Bro, spaghetti, cereal. After the first year, he was going to the school ministry, which was awesome too.
Yeah.
And, man, I was so proud of him because he's working hard,
Yeah.
trying to make ends meet. But he was so stressed. And at one point he had asked to come back. And I just told him like, no way I would do that to you because it would erode your confidence that you can actually do this.
Yeah.
So Lauren and I, we helped him financially. We helped him all kinds of ways, but that was
That's
me,
awesome,
like,
man. I love it.
Wrapping your mind around, as a father, it's my job to help you be successful, to help you grow, to help you. And when they're 17 and 18, like, I'm not going to beg you to stay.
Totally.
I'm here to be a coach. You want me to help you coach you? If you don't, go find a coach.
Yeah. I love it, Jay.
And because of that, our relationship is awesome.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
Yep. Anyways, man, these are the core conversations that we get to have with our kids. And there's nothing more important in our life than setting our kids up for success.
Yeah.
And starting to have a real plan for them. And so I just want to challenge you guys. I think there's dads in like two categories. One is your kids are at the age where you need to have a conversation with them, or they're beyond the stage and you should have had a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Either way, it's awesome because you get to go, hey, this is a conversation I should have had a while ago.
Yeah.
It's my job to help train you up, to raise you up, so things are going to change a little bit.
And I would even encourage you, men, that maybe your kids are out of the house or you don't have kids, be involved with fathering and mentoring at your church.
Yeah, it's true.
Because there's a lot of kids that are represented that don't have the dad, right? That don't have the man, that role model that's teaching them how. I thankfully had a very involved and a great dad, but I also had an amazing youth pastor, an amazing youth leader.
Yep.
Like, I'm a product of a number of different men that have poured into me.
It's true.
Right. And so I just encourage men too, like, don't just think of your blood children, but what are the spiritual children the 100%. Lord has put around you that God has asked you to also be this man too, and lean in. Like, I'll never forget Tony Jones. Mentored me in high school. Some of the most valuable life lessons were taught to me from him. And he was a guy at our church, and so
thanks, Tony.
Be that guy.
Thanks, Tony. Be like
Thanks, Tony. Be like Tony. Be like Tony.
Listen, man, I don't know if you guys know this, but our courses are free. Our BraveCo Foundations of Masculinity.
I did know that, actually.
Our 12-week course is free. Our Sexuality and Relationships course is free. It's a great way to jump in if you're like, oh man, I don't know that I have these tools to create an ethos. I don't know if I have the tools to, like, our ethos is in our first 12 weeks. It's in our Foundations of Masculinity. You can literally jump into that for free. You can lead other men in it. You can just go to braveco.org and grab all that content for free. So
how much? What's the cost again?
It's free.
Free $99.
Free $99. You can upgrade to our premium version for $15.
And then you get to spend the night at Jason's on a Friday night once a month.
And listen to Cole preach on Sunday at his new church.
It's not new anymore.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that you loved it. We will see you next week. And stay brave.
And disclaimer, you don't actually get to sleep over at Jason's house.
Yeah, you don't. See ya. Hey, BraveCo men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.